everybody, welcome back to an episode of The Why presented by All American Roof Pros and All American Art Studios. I'm your host, Dylan Mullins, and today I'm sitting down with somebody that I have literally known my entire life. That's because she is family, and I'm super excited to have her on the podcast today. That is Miss Amanda Imhoff. I almost called you your maiden name.
That's all right. That would work.
So Amanda, just kind of like let the audience know, like, your elevator pitch is what I always call it. Like, give us a minute of like who you are,
Sure.
What you would tell people just meeting them on the street.
Sure. Like I said, my name's Amanda. I am a mother of 3 boys that keep me on my toes. My job is a respiratory therapist, married for 10 years to my wonderful husband. Don't tell him I said that. Just living life. Just, being who I am, and that changes from moment to moment. So
yeah, of course. It's crazy, like, how much life does change.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as you know, I've got a little, she'll be 8 months old next week, daughter, and just like watching her change, and I can only imagine how much, like, because Brennan's 21. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So for 21 years you've been a mom. Mm-hmm. And as we were talking a little bit off camera, like, you're in these different phases with each kid. You got one, Bryce.
He's a junior.
Okay, I couldn't remember sophomore or junior. I knew it was around
16,
that age.
He's 17 in April. Yeah.
And then you've got Branson, who's
10. Who's in 5th grade? Yes.
So they're all over the place.
It's a broad spectrum, and they're all in different stages of their life, which is very interesting.
Yeah, what's been the biggest challenge, like, having that age separation with the kids?
I guess it's, when they were little, it was different, right? So it was there's about 5 years. So I called it I called it my 5-year plan. And so I had Brennan, then had 5 years, and I had Bryce, and then when I had Bryce, Brennan could go and do all the things. Like, you wanted a juice, it's in the fridge, go get a juice.
You gotta help her. Yeah.
And now I have another baby that I have to do everything for. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Like, why would you do this? And then I did it again. So, and then I worried about them not being close, right? So you and your brother are really super close.
Well, also we're
in age,
15 months apart.
Yes. So that was something that made me nervous, that they weren't going to be close, because there was, between my youngest and my oldest, there's 10 years. And what I found as when they were younger, they're close, but maybe not as close as you and your brother would have been. But now that Brennan's older, I feel like their bond is getting stronger in a different way, which I'm very excited for that. And it was interesting. So, I have Brennan who just recently moved out, and that was interesting. I had my first Christmas without him, and that was different. And
yeah, how challenging was that?
It was rough, because, even last year, he's older, he's in his 20s, he's 20, and he still got up with the 2 younger ones, and he opened presents and obviously he's not super as excited as...
Did the song and dance.
Yes. And then this year we had to plan a time for him to come, and I'm like, do we wait? Do we not? Like, do we wait for him? And even my youngest, Branson, was like, should we wait for Brennan to come over and open presents? Should we, do these things? And he came over and he hung out for a little bit, maybe an hour or 2, and then he left. And it was different, and it was so weird. And it's like, and I know that as time keeps going, it's going to get more different and become more of a norm. I get that. But just different, because you spend all this time, like you said, 20 some years where you're with them for every holiday, and now you're trying to plan that holiday.
Yeah, it's funny. A couple things with that. Like, you talked about how Brandon and I are super close. And the funny part is like, we weren't always. And I saw a graph one time that showed, it was like a relationships graph, but I remember the sibling one very, very vividly. It said, like, as you're young, you're very close, and then you get kind of in those teenage years where you start to find your independence, you start to grow apart, and then, obviously as you get into high school, like, you start to, I'm sure you probably saw that with your brother, where he kind of pushed you away. Yeah. You're my dumb little sister type of thing. And then there's typically, and it doesn't happen all the time, but then there's a point in life where they kind of come a little bit closer, and there's some ups and downs, and then, the eventual goal, if everything's healthy, is for them to get nice and close, and then hopefully, be, and for us, because you're my cousin on my mom's side. We've kind of always had Christmases together, even after, because, great grandma, she died in 97?
I think so.
So, or 98?
It
was one of those two.
I remember I was in junior high, and I graduated in 2000, so...
Probably 96,
Yeah,
97?
96, I think, yeah.
So she would have barely got to meet me. I mean, I was 2. But I remember all of our holidays, and it wasn't just, your side of the family. It was grandma's side too.
Yes.
Like, everybody just got together.
Right.
And it was crazy how close-knit we were.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of want that, I guess. You yearn for that, especially when you come from that situation. Right. I would imagine somebody that didn't have that at all probably yearns for it more.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, we almost took it for granted.
Right.
It was probably a little bit annoying. Oh, we got to go to Uncle Joe's house or,
Right.
whatever.
Right.
There's probably a little bit of annoyance as a child, but then you kind of look back and you're like, oh, I'm super grateful there was that.
You got the experience of things.
Yeah. And so, but with the sibling thing, like, it's just crazy how the relationship, bonds form. And yeah, you want to think that if they're closer, they'll be closer together. It doesn't matter.
No.
They're going to click for different reasons. And, I've got 4 siblings, and I click with everyone for a different reason on a different level. And, it's the same with all of our relationships if you really think about it.
I think it's more important for me. I'm not close with my brother. So I think it's important to me that they're close with one another. And my relationship with my brother doesn't affect me in the long run. You know what I'm saying? Like, it is what it is. But with
there are probably moments when
there are moments where I wish things could be different, but I also understand why they're not. And I want them to know that they'll always have each other.
Yeah.
No matter what happens, they have one another, and that's always been a huge thing for me, for them to know that. And they are all 3 different personalities, and they are, and I'm sure that makes them kind of mad at one another at certain times, but I'm hoping that, if I'm not here to keep them together, I hope that they stay together.
Well, and you better hope that they don't piss off Branson too bad, because he's probably going to be the largest one by a large margin.
That's what I keep telling them.
Is that kid getting recruited by every football team?
Not yet, but he might. He's 10, and I think he's 5'2", 5'4"-ish.
He's huge for
wears a size 9 men's shoe. Yeah. So, yeah.
It's like a dog. He's got big feet, so he's going to be a big boy.
He's growing into his body. So, sports just yet aren't, like, amazing, but because he's got all these long limbs that he's trying to grow into, but definitely will be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's, so let's kind of talk about, because, I mean, we talk about the different stages of life that you have, and you've kind of already experienced with the younger or with the older 2, especially kind of like that. I know both of them played travel ball, and that was kind of your thing with them. Yes. And now you're with Branson. We obviously help you guys out with his racing stuff, and we're super excited to be able to do that. Has there been a big, is there a lot of symmetry between the travel ball stuff and the racing stuff? Has it been a new challenge for you?
It's been I would say, it's been a new challenge. Travel ball isn't nearly as nerve-wracking.
Of course.
As racing, and
a little bit more dangerous.
Yes, and my heart gets a little Twitter-pated and gets kind of crazy, and I do a pray and thing like that. But what's been different? This is kind of off like where you were heading, is that I can enjoy more of Branson's racing.
Yeah.
Because I'm older. You know what I'm saying? So I
slow down a little bit.
I slow down a little bit. Like, with Brennan, I'm like, okay, we got to go here, here, and here, and then we got to go do this, and this, and this weekend we're in Indiana for a travel ball, and we got to make sure that we have all these things. Where with Branson, I know that I can enjoy it, right? So I'm not as stressed as much, and I actually feel like, hey, you probably should be enjoying this.
Yeah.
Whereas the older boys, well, Bryce still travels, and I'm like that with him. No matter what happens, I'm reminding myself, hey, listen, they're not going to be doing this.
And you got your last go around probably, because it doesn't sound like Branson's going to be making a jump into baseball anytime soon.
No. So it is different, and the setup is different. We camp with Branson. We have a camper. We devote, whole weekends, my husband mostly, to going to the race. And in one weekend he can race, 6 to 8 times. And
he's pretty dang good, huh?
He is good. He is good. I think he finished 2nd overall this year in one class, and then 3rd in a second class. Last year was 1st in 2 different classes. He's good at it. He's fast, and he's smart, and he's good. Like, it's awesome to watch him. And I don't think that people grasp the things that he does on his 4-wheeler. Like, when he talks to his friends, he's like, I hit this hill and we jumped, and then they're like, oh, okay. Well, one of his friends that he's really close with said that, I could probably beat you in a 4-wheeler race. And Branson's like, okay. So the local fairground, Richland County Fairground, they have their race, and the little boy came and watched Branson, and we were sitting in the stands. Branson went up there, and he's like, I don't think I can beat you in a race.
That's
so,
funny.
and I don't think people, like, even if when I show them videos of the things that he does, I don't think it doesn't grasp the concept of him flying through the air at crazy speeds. So
yeah, no, it is. And for me, we had Lance Heimberger. I'm sure you guys probably know Lance. He's obviously doing sprint car stuff, but similar in the racing field. And he's actually probably going to be the episode right before you. So it was cool to get a couple. We got two different perspectives. We got somebody that's actually racing, and then somebody that's watching it from the stands and being financial support.
Yeah.
So. But the one thing that I kind of took away from that is, like, it's a lot to me like wrestling because there's nobody else to blame.
Yes, big difference.
With baseball, so-and-so didn't make that catch or they didn't make that hit or whatever, right? With racing, like, it's you.
Him.
It's you.
Yeah.
And if the quad didn't perform, that's on you. If, if you didn't tweak it enough or it could be, I guess you could put it on your team. I'm
on
sure
his dad.
It's dad. Yeah, I was getting ready to say the racing team is dad, right? But at the end of the day, like, it teaches so much more responsibility.
Oh gosh, yes.
I feel like it's sitting.
I think that every kid, and I can see the difference, and not that it's not that it's a bad thing, but my 2 older boys didn't do anything individual sport wise. Bryce played wrestling 1 year. You play wrestling? Is that what it's?
Wrestled.
He wrestled. I don't know if you played it, but anyways, but they were always in team sports. And Branson, with this, I see a huge difference in his ability to talk to other people, his confidence that he has in himself. And, from the youngest age, he'd be on a podium talking into the podium on the microphone in front of 100 people. They may or may not be paying attention to him, but I would have never done that as a kid. There's no way you could pay me to go up there. And he's just like, blah, 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 blah.
Which is ironic because, like, I would say that you're more outgoing than Gary is.
I am.
Because Gary's very introverted.
Yes. Yes. I don't like to speak in public, though. I have, like, a whole, like...
Well, see, and I was just talking, because everybody's like, you're so, like, actually, Tori and I were talking about this the other day. She's like, you're so extroverted. I'm like, you don't understand how much anxiety I actually have when I go talk to somebody.
Yeah.
But, like, I just overcome said fear.
Right. No, yeah.
I attribute a lot of that to, like, the individual sport of wrestling. And I think that's why sports like wrestling and racing and, like, those are, and once again, not to take anything away from the organized team sports, but, like, Lance and I were talking about Madison's horrendous run in football when he was sitting in that chair. And he was 1-39.
Oh yeah,
and obviously Brendan wasn't much. I think he was about the same actually.
Yeah.
But either way, like there's so much other things that you can put on someone else in those circumstances, right? Versus if you suck at wrestling, you suck at racing, you suck.
You suck. You're just not good at it. Yeah.
Yeah. Or you got to get better. You got to have the determination to want to go be better. I wasn't a great wrestler. I coached wrestling for about 10 years after high school, and a lot of things that I wish I would have done a little bit differently with my wrestling career. But, like, I was an okay wrestler, but I also had to work for it. I was never the naturally talented kid.
Right.
And for so many kids, like, I just think parents too often, like, want that superstar baseball player. I'm sure you saw that a lot in travel ball.
Yeah, and I felt that way. Like, I had a whole moment where I was like, you need to get a grip.
It's for your kid, right?
Yeah. So, like, with Brennan, like, we paid for, the travel ball, and we did the things, and then his junior year, I had a thing like this isn't
like a holy shit moment.
Yeah, like what not that I would change anything.
No,
ever.
You never would.
But like what I was doing it was for is to get him to the next level, right? So I wasn't doing it, for him. It was to get to the next level. And then his junior year came, and it might have even been his sophomore year, and I was like, he's not going to the next level, which is nothing wrong with that.
No. Yeah.
But in my mind, because I grew up very athletic, and I grew up like. I'm probably similar to my dad and being like, you got to do X, Y,
I remember
Z.
going to watch LeBron James play at Hillsdale.
Oh, yeah.
You took us, remember?
Yeah.
I remember that. That was crazy.
Yeah. So,
yeah, and that's another thing that I, like, coming from Hillsdale, us, to watch Madison football, I'm like... Bro, this ain't even like... And granted, Hillsdale was terrible when you were in school, I understand. But, like, when I was in school, it was really good. But yeah, so then you go into that, and like there's so many other factors that go into a team sport like that.
Absolutely.
And I think too often, like, parents get caught up in themselves. And I'm sure when you first signed Bryce up to, or Brennan up to play, you're like, no, it's for the right reasons.
Yeah.
He's going to get more time. Like, he loves the sport. But how many kids did you watch over the years get defeated by their parents?
Right.
And then they build kind of a resentment towards not only the sport, but it's going to become abrasive towards the parent.
Absolutely.
And that's where it's so, like, challenging, right? You know, I hear parents all the time, and I've been lucky, like, to be able to kind of, like, play the backseat a little bit myself before I became a parent. And Tori and I had a lot of conversations about, like, she's very good at horseback riding. Like, her family owns a massive farm. She's nationally accredited. I think she's a 9-time national champion, multiple-time points champion. She's all these things. Kind of like Bryce or Brennan, or all these damn B names. Branson. That's probably what you do in the house.
It is. And sometimes my dog's names come out, too. So it's totally fine.
But with Branson, with the racing, right? Like, he's super good at it. But he grows up, and he has a passion about racing. He cannot... You have to be so damn careful as a parent not to force your passions on your kids.
Right, absolutely. It's hard. It's so hard.
It's freaking hard.
And I remember playing soccer, and I was decent at soccer. Some people tell you that I could have went to the next level. I don't remember ever being that good. But I remember my dad pushing me and pushing me and pushing me. And then I remember one time said, I'm not doing this for me. I'm now doing this for you, and I don't want to do it anymore. And I did have the opportunity to go and try out for a D1 school. They were just getting their ladies soccer program up and coming, and I said, I don't want to do it. By the time that I got there, I was like, I don't want to do it. And it kind of transitions into, I feel, he'd probably kill me for talking about this, but I feel like sometimes Brennan, my oldest one, he did sports for so long, then that's what we eat, breathe, slept, sports. And I think when he got out of high school, there was a lack of that. And
because it's structure.
Yes. And
they tell you what to do. They tell you what time to do it.
And
it's kind of like the military.
Yes. And he went through this stage where then he was like, not golfing, but bowling. He would bowl. Like, he was trying to find something that filled that gap. And I think that's hard. And I think it's super important as a parent that you don't revolve your kid's life around this sport or whatever their passion is at that time. Well, give them a broad spectrum.
And don't hold their value in that.
Correct.
That's the hard part. Correct. Like, because like as parents, you want to think that you're being supportive and like, but when they can see the defeat in you, that they didn't make a team or they didn't get to a certain position or they didn't win something, because at the end of the day, we're going to transpire those things onto them. Yeah. And there's so many parents. I remember watching travel ball with the boys, and like, my dad's even probably a little bit guilty of it. And once again, he'd probably kill me for saying that too. But like there's so many, and I probably as an older brother probably did that sometimes, because we're like, oh, we just want you to be good. We want you to win. We want you to do this and do that. And we forget about because I think, not to say that this conversation's like, oh, anti-organized sports, because I think that it's so damn valuable.
I do too, yeah.
I really do. But I think there's a fine line between just being supportive and helping and once again, not letting your kids quit when they start something.
Absolutely.
That's something that I'm huge about.
Me too.
I had so many freaking wrestlers because I was not an easy coach. They just peace out in the middle of the season. It's like, dude.
Yeah.
Like, you can't.
Right.
What happens when you don't like your job and now you don't have another job? Like, they don't.
Right.
And our world's so just throwaway nowadays that you have to give your kids that structure, but also at the same time, like, not putting so much weight on them being successful at something you think they should be successful at.
Right.
Yeah, it's so damn hard.
And it's hard. It's hard.
So
it's hard because you see potential, right? And then they're your kid on top of it. And then you see them do something that you think they could have done better. Matter of fact, you probably know that they could have done better. And they chose not to. And now you're upset with them. And then how do you reflect that to them without, I don't know, it's just hard. I go through that a lot with my middle one, Bryce. And it's just hard. And I have to remember that in the end, he's the one. If he wants it, go get it. And if he doesn't, that's okay too. He's having fun. So
yeah, the good Lord gave us free will for a reason. We just didn't think it would be enacted that fast as kids.
Right.
But, I watch my 8-month-old, she's in the rolling stage. And she rolls around everywhere. And, like, you can try to contain her, but she's going to go where the hell she wants to go, right? And it's so different once they get bigger. We too often forget, and we think, oh, we've just got this kid, and we know what they're capable of. We know what genetics they have, and we can see their talent. But in order to pull that out of them, that's what makes it so damn hard. And you almost have to, like, maybe you can shine some light on this. Did you ever have, I guess with all boys, maybe you didn't. Did you have an opportunity to coach the kids?
Not my kids. I don't know that I could ever coach my kids.
I don't think I could either.
Nope, there's no way.
Yeah, I don't think I could either. Because the two reasons, right? Because I've always seen like it's a freaking Little League baseball, man. Little League like that's such a good indicator of like if you're, and not to say you're a bad parent, but just like you put too much weight in stuff. Like so many parents like push their kid to be the pitcher, or push their kid to do this, or push their kid to do that, and then they piss off their buddies because they're putting their kid in a position to shine, and he's not. And there's another kid that had more potential, and on top of that, like I would never want to be the reason my kid resented something they loved.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's probably the bigger reason, right? Tori and I had that conversation. Like, even though I was a hell of a wrestler.
My kids, they don't listen to me half the time anyway.
Exactly.
I'm in front of a whole group of people and they're not listening to me, so that ain't happening.
But you probably always got the thing of like, oh, your kids are so good.
Oh, yeah.
That's like, where the hell did that come from?
They're not good for me, but you can record it and show it to me. That'd be great.
No, parenthood's so damn hard.
It is. It's very hard.
The funny part to me is like, my mother-in-law, when we brought our daughter home, she's like, well, they explain all that stuff to you at the hospital. They didn't explain jack. They hand me a baby and they're like, good luck.
Right.
We had to watch some video on like, don't beat the crap out of your kid. And that was it. I'm serious. Like, watch this video. It's called like the Purple Cry or something.
Oh my gosh.
They probably make you watch. I'm pretty sure it's like state mandated.
Oh my gosh.
It's basically like when your baby's crying too much, like don't
shake them.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, that's cool. Y'all gonna show me how to change a diaper? The nurse like showed us how to like make a swaddle.
Yeah.
And that was about it. That was about it. Like they don't give you this instruction manual, and that's what makes it hard.
And even if they did, I mean, it's off script all the time.
It is.
There's no preparing for anything. My three kids, like. Brennan is so different than Bryce. Like my struggles with Brennan when he was a teenager are anywhere compared to my struggles with Bryce, and they won't be the same when Branson's there. And he's pushing buttons right now at preteen.
How have you noticed any cultural factors that have played into that, like the difference in technology and stuff? Obviously, Brennan kind of graduated during COVID, right?
He was 2021, so he was a junior.
Okay, so he had a year of COVID, type of thing.
I don't know that I've noticed any kind of cultural things. I think that their personalities are just different. Like Brennan is a gamer. He likes to play the video games. He was very obsessed with that. Bryce isn't into that stuff. He's into more, not physical, but I don't mean that. He's got a girlfriend. It's not physical. He's more into
quality time.
Yes. And being by himself. So the struggles that I have with Brennan, like I could ground him from the video games and it was a huge deal. Bryce, he's like, I don't know what you're taking away from me. Go ahead, because he's not into those stuff. Yeah. And then with Branson, I do see the video games again with him, and that's just started. So we've got to kind of.
Well, you kind of have an idea on how to control him, though.
Yeah. So, but I just think the personalities played this big role, and it's weird. It's weird that for the most part, Brennan and Bryce grew up the same household, I'm saying, same choices, same things, and saw the same things, and for them to be so different, just like my brother and I, right? So we grew up in the same household and we saw the same things and experienced the same things, but we experienced them differently, which made us look back on our childhood differently. And
it's all perspective.
Yes. And I think that as an older mom, not that I'm super old, but as an older mom...
You're older than me, so remember that.
I am. But as an older mom with Branson, I would say that he's got the better version of me. I'm more patient with him. And that's hard for me sometimes to think about. And then I wish that I could redo some things, but I can't.
How do you manage, like he's your last, so how do you manage the baby syndrome? Because that happens a lot, right?
Oh gosh.
You see it happen with other people anyway.
Yeah, it's hard.
Because you're experiencing last.
Yeah.
So then you
everything's it's going to be the last time that he does, like last time have to change a diaper, last time that he goes to elementary school. Now he's at the the junior high now. It's hard, and my two older boys probably notice it a lot more than I do.
They probably got it a little harder than he did.
I don't notice it that much, but it is hard because I think that, like I said, I want to be able to remember those feelings when milestones happen. And with the two older ones, I think I was just trying to survive at that point in time and make sure that they survived too. So
Yeah, because you were a pretty young mom.
21 when I had
So about
Brennan.
like my mom.
Yeah.
20 with me.
Yeah.
When she was 19 when she got pregnant, she was just turned 20 when she had me.
I was 20 and just turned 21. And it was a lot of, and I was a single mom for a while. And that was different, 21, single mom, working a full-time job. And I've always been blessed that my family has been able to help with childcare. And Brennan would go to my dad's or my mom's while I worked. And I was blessed that I had those options, but still experiencing life at 21.
Well, and I will say this, like, I think and Brendan may not realize this now, but like I have now, because I'm 30, I'll be 31 at the end of the month. And it's, you come to a point in life, I think, when you realize like your parents were still kids when they had you, right? Mm-hmm. And even me at 30, having my first kid, like I'm still learning stuff.
Right.
I think I'm probably better positioned than my parents were when they were both 20 when they had me. And there becomes, I guess there doesn't necessarily have to, but give yourself some grace, I guess, is because at the end of the day, all we can control, and I think Brendan will give you plenty of grace. I mean, I know the kid pretty well, and he's a very good kid. And that's, I kind of had to do that. And actually, I was at a retreat recently, and the guy, I was talking about kind of like my desire to like provide and where that comes from and stuff like that. And he goes, "Were your parents present?" And it's the first time anybody's asked me that question. I actually had to like chew on it.
Right.
And I was like, no. Like they weren't. Like they were. Like they never missed a ball game.
Right.
But also like they were working a lot and like they were trying to provide and they were doing their best. And like there's all these other things that come into effect. And like it's a struggle because at no different point in your life, and like you said, Lexi got a different version of my mom than I did.
Right.
And good or bad, right, wrong, and different, like however it goes, like those things are what makes us who we are.
Absolutely.
And it's funny that you brought up like the relationship or like how two people can be raised identically and they become totally different people. But it reminds me of this old adage that says, you may have heard this, but there were twins that were born to an alcoholic father. Mm-hmm. And one became a doctor and one became an alcoholic. When you asked either one, why did you become that person? They said, because my dad was an alcoholic.
Right.
You either outwork your circumstances or you play into them.
Absolutely.
And we oftentimes like lose that in perspective, because like there are differences majorly between Brandon and I, not as much as there were, but like, I'll throw him under the bus. Like I was the one, I turned 16 first, so I was driving him to school and lazy asshole wouldn't get up in time. And like, I'm out there honking the horn. Like I was an early guy and he was the like last second get in the car kind of guy. Right. And, like even with that, like there's just, and we were raised under the exact same circumstances, and it's just kind of funny, like when you look at it and all that way. It's hard though, as a sibling to somebody like that, when you know that they had the exact same opportunities, if not better. Right. Especially when I know, for you, your brother's older than you are, but like you were raised in the exact same circumstances, sometimes even a little bit better by some circumstance, and then it just doesn't work the same way. Or actually at church. I think I've talked about this a few times on the podcast, but like when we're talking about somebody about Christ, like it's so hard to actually level with them because we don't know what they went through. Right. And like when you think about that, you're like, well, shit. Yeah, I had the right intentions, but like I didn't. And the same can be said about everything. Right. Because we don't know what somebody walks through to get to where they are. Absolutely. And that's what's so hard. And somebody can see the same thing and take it entirely differently than you. So yeah, that's always fun. Yeah.
I've really learned that I'm a supervisor, at work, and I've really learned that in my role there because when I say something to you, when it comes out my mouth, could mean something totally different, and then somebody takes offense to it, and you're like, it's not even where I was going with that. That's not even, and then you have to kind of do, not a backpedal, but have a conversation around that. And again, it goes back to perspective, your perspective is your reality. And what that looks like for you is totally different than what that looks like for me.
And what really sucks about it, when you look at it on a psychological level, we develop who we are as people between the ages of 6 and 11. So you can't do shit about a grown person in that perspective. I mean, seriously, like that's what really sucks, especially as a leader. Yeah. Like you want to be able to just transpire your message on these
Right.
people, and like you're gonna say it entirely different than somebody may be
Right.
able to receive it. Let's talk about that. So as a leader at work, like how, because you would be a millennial technically, right?
I don't like to consider myself that.
But that's what you would be.
Yes, there's a
generation.
cutoff right there.
Okay,
yeah.
so you're like me. I'm on
82.
the like.
Yeah.
Nah, I'm not quite. I'm like thinking like 96 is the cutoff for.
81, I think, is the cutoff, and then I'm 82.
I'm a millennial too, so just
Yeah.
I'm an old age millennial is what I call myself because
Right.
that. How have you noticed? Like, so I'm assuming you probably manage people from all spectrums, just
Yes.
and knowing because you're a respiratory therapist, so like I'm sure you have
Right.
people who are what would that be, Gen Xers
Right.
or whatever the hell
yeah.
one is
yeah.
before.
Yeah, it's weird. I have a couple that are
Hell, you might even have a boomer or two.
21,
hanging out.
like, and I'm like, you are like. You're just like, it's so weird. 'Cause
You're old enough to be my kid.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I don't think about it like that. Like, that's not how. And then I'm like, how old are you? And they're like 21. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so crazy.
Yeah, you're only as old as you feel.
Yeah,
I agree.
yeah.
I still feel like I'm 25. Like I have to remind
Yeah.
myself, I'm like, yeah, fuck,
Yeah.
30. But the how has that been a challenge for you? Like stepping into that manager role and then like being able, because like you're communicating across like 4 different groups of people.
Spectrums. It's hard. It's hard because I'm pretty set in my ways, and I've been in the last couple years, especially since I got this role, to try to develop to be not in those ways, right? So either you get it or you don't was my attitude for the longest time, and if you don't get it, then that's not my problem, and I can't be like that in a leadership.
Especially in a world post-COVID.
Yes. So it's hard, and I have to try to kind of get to where they're at, meet them where they're at in life. And I think it's important to have connections with people, to ask questions. That way you can meet them where they're at, and not always assume that the understanding or what you're trying to project or portray is understood, right?
Absolutely.
So, I had an incident where I was just trying to offer some help, and it was taken completely backwards. And I consider myself a very caring person, and I'm empathetic. Like if you start crying, I'm gonna start crying, and it's very sad. And if people are upset, I'm upset. And I did something, and to me, I was just trying to give them all the options, right? It wasn't me trying to be not considerate of their feelings. I was just trying to be considerate of their feelings. And it totally got construed into something way more than what it needed to be. And it hurt me because I'm like, that's not the kind of person I am. So I have to be more aware when I go into a situation.
No, absolutely. And that's, so like something I've noticed is, so my mom plays in a little bit of a leadership role, so does my dad here, and they're both obviously in that further generation back, and like your mom would probably fall very close to that generation as well. And, like they're very by the book, like, oh, I work hard, you should work hard, this, that, and the other.
Right.
And then as they get different groups of people, and even like I was kind of saying, the post-COVID thing has been so weird.
Yeah.
Like people want, it's, I don't know if it was necessarily this way, but it feels like it was. This is my perspective, I suppose. Is like before COVID, people would go after the more money, or they were looking for the better paying job, or now it feels like people just want stability.
Right.
And they want to feel like they're valued, and like there's all these other like factors that we kind of like bred into society after that, because the world got so weird for a minute. And then it makes it so much harder to manage, because now you're, like you said, you're dealing with these conflicting personalities, and you have somebody that you could say the exact same thing to someone else, and in a pre-COVID world, it probably would have come across just fine. But now, like everybody, I don't want to just generalize the world and say that they're like softer, but like we just kind of are as humans, right? Because like we are more empathetic now, and like we do like. I think it was a good perspective change for a lot of the world. Like, oh shit, this thing can go away quick.
Yeah.
You know, and especially you being in the respiratory therapist
Values
field.
changed,
Yes.
right? So we went from work, and that's what we're doing. We're working to, you know what? Let's pump the brakes a little bit. Let me spend a little bit more time at home. Let me do it, you know, and COVID forced us to do that, right? And I think that changed the way people looked at things. And I'm still a workhorse. I probably work way too much, but I get the perspective. My family still is important to me, and being there for things is important to me. So I get that perspective. It is hard to kind of flip back and forth between the two, but I get it.
Where do you think the work comes from?
I think it comes from my parents and their generation, right? So mostly my mom. for reasons that she'll know why. But and you know, my dad too, they pushed, right? So like the sports, we go back to the sports, they pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, and you show up and you do your job, you look people in the eye, you hold yourself to this standard, and you'll make it, right? So, and that's the way I was raised. You go into a room, you look people in the eye, you shake their hand, you go to your job, you do what you're supposed to do, and you go home. And I think that's just the way my generation was raised. And I think it's a little bit different now. I was watching some TikToks because sometimes I'm addicted to them. And they were saying, don't care about your kids' grades as long as they're good human beings. Not to like aspect where they're failing out, right? But if your kids are making it and they're a C student, that's okay. That's okay. And are they a good human being? Are they going to go into, are they going
to be a productive member of society?
Can they look people in the eye and hold a conversation, and things like that? So sometimes that's hard to do, and look at, because, I don't want my kids to.
That sparks another conversation though. I'm a big proponent against holding kids like. Dr. John Maxwell says it's the best. If you judge a fish by its ability to fly with eagles, he's going to fail every time.
Absolutely.
And I struggle so much with our education system for the aspect of we're just worried about can you do multiplication? Can you do this?
Right.
Can you do that? And this morning, my wife and I, Tori had to take me to go get my truck, and we picked up two girls. They didn't have school today. They were going over to the barn with her to ride horses, and I'm just asking how school's going and stuff, and the one girl goes, "Yeah, I got all A's except for I got a B in reading," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's good." And she's like, "Yeah, I got to get it up to an A, or I got to C." She's like 7 or 8. I don't. It is what it is. But I'm sitting there thinking, and I'm like, what? Especially in today's world, I understand the benefit of being able to read and be able to write and be able to be proficient in those things, but how much of it do we end up using after school? Even these kids that go, you have a college education. Mm-hmm. How much did you actually learn that you have application on in the real world? Now, that's not to say I don't want my respiratory therapist to be from a Cracker Jacks box, right?
Right.
But, and I say the same thing about doctors. I don't want some guy that was wrenching on a car the day before to come do my open heart surgery. Right. However, there are so many opportunities outside of that to go make very good money and support your family and be fulfilled,
right?
Which I think is probably the most important thing. I'm gonna tell my kids, if you're happy with being a burger flipper, just be the best damn burger flipper there is.
Absolutely.
I'm cool with that,
right? But
you're gonna be good at it,
right?
And you're gonna enjoy it,
right?
Where do you think that perspective shift changed? Because it sounds like you were raising kids. Because I know when I was in school, I graduated in 12. My parents were like, "You're going to college. You're doing the college thing," and that's all we heard from school.
Right.
And it was probably just as bad when you were in school. There was no such thing as a contingency plan. You were supposed to go to college, and now we've gotten to the world where we see the average tradesperson's 45 years old. We need more people that can do those jobs. Mm-hmm. And we're doing it, but it's a slow turn to get kids pushed back into the trades and go to these blue collar jobs that are really so essential and vital to our economy. And even because with the respiratory therapist, you can get an associate's, right?
Associates, yep.
And do that, which I think that's a much better plan than going and getting a 4-year degree in something. Right. And once again, you want to go be a librarian, go get a history degree. Right. I don't know when the last time I stepped foot in the library was, but good for you. But I really will challenge you on your goals and aspirations as to what you're trying to do with that. And instead of just trying to check a box. And that's where I get so frustrated with our current society. I'm probably never going to be invited back to a couple schools in the area because I literally went in and told kids, if your heart is not set on you going to college, do not. No. Because why the hell are we sending these kids to go get in a shit ton of debt for them to just turn around and be like, well, I don't have a job and I don't want to do what I went to school for. Yeah. That's what's so frustrating. But when did you, so you kind of raised kids through a couple different eras here. Did you see that shift happen?
I know. I've always kind of believed in that. I went to college right out of high school. I said, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I did nothing. And I ended up with $30,000 worth of debt and paid on that for years and years and years. And I know, my kids, they're smart, right? But they learn differently. And I think the school systems teach in a box. And if you're not within this box, you're going to struggle. And I know that for a fact. I had some ADHD and some dyslexia. Branson, who, by the way, I don't know if you know this, is going to be on he's coming
Good.
in to do
I'm
an
excited
interview.
to have him.
He's got dyslexia, and I tell him it has nothing to do with who you are as a person. You see things differently. And unfortunately, they're not teaching you how to see those things. And I'm really thankful that I've taught myself, that I've learned differently. And when I look at my kids, I'm okay. But here's what we're going to do. You're putting effort into your schoolwork.
Yeah, just put effort. That's exactly right.
We're not
going to fly by and use it as a crutch.
No, absolutely not. So I'm good. I said, you know what? No D's, because I know that you're capable. I know you're capable of A's and B's, but here's where we're at. We're at a C's. Please just let's.
That's the bare minimum.
Yes. And it's effort. And I don't care and I told him it's different if you're putting a shit ton of effort into it and you're an F student. I'm proud of you. Yeah, but I'm proud of you because I see you putting effort in. But if you're putting no effort in and you're an F student, that's a different conversation. So that's where they're at. But I also tell them, you've got to find something that you're passionate about. So Brennan's in this transitional phase in life.
Well, she's 21.
He's 21, and he worked with you for a while, and he liked that. And then he's chasing money, so he's somewhere out now. And he's on night shift. He's at a factory, and he's miserable. He's tired all the time, and I mean he gets paid good.
Screws your whole sleep schedule up.
So we've had several conversations of what he wants to do, and I said, Brennan, listen, you're young, like. Try
Screw some shit up.
Yeah.
Screw
try
some
it.
shit
If it
up.
don't work out, guess what? Try something different. I said, but always have a backup plan. So
Yep.
that's always my thing with my kids. Don't not that I think they need a backup plan with everything, but like especially with trying careers or buying a house, with a big plan. Shoot for the stars. But no, you might aim a little bit lower than that.
Might hit the moon. Yeah.
Be prepared for a second option. And that's what I told him. I said, he's like, well, I'm going to go to day shift. And he goes, I just can't do night shift anymore. And And then when the company sells, blah, 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 I'm going to look for something different. And I said, well, if you're looking in factory, you'll probably have to go back to night shift. So what does that look like for you? Have you thought about what that looks like for you? And I said, you know what? You're 21. Try something.
Yeah, just screw it up.
Try it. The hardest step is the first one. Try it.
Gary Vee says it the best. Like, you can screw up your life before you're 30 and you'll still be okay.
Absolutely.
Like, there's so many kids that just need to go challenge themselves at something. And I'll actually challenge you a little bit on the B plan thing. Mm-hmm. Because have you ever heard of the story? I can't remember. It was a Spanish explorer. They actually discovered an island off the coast of Mexico. And their entire conquest, I think it was actually, they may have landed in Mexico. I'm probably screwing up the story. But either way, their entire goal was to go and conquer this land. And when they got there, the commander turned around and said, burn the ships. Because they didn't need a plan B.
Oh.
They were conquering. This is what they're going to do.
And they did it.
Yeah, so what happens is in my head psychologically, because I actually was kind of serving two masters when I first started this company, and it really hindered the company. And by doing that, I was doing this, a little bit of this. I'm going to get my teaching degree. I'm doing this, and then I got this other job over here. But once I went all in on it, it's crazy how much exponentially because you don't have a plan B.
Right.
I got to figure it out.
Gotta figure it out. I get that.
So that's the only thing I would say.
Maybe plan B wasn't what I was thinking, but maybe see, that's hard because I'm prepared. Be
prepared more than you can. Yeah. So be prepared if everything doesn't go your way.
So that's maybe what I meant. My whole life, I've always been okay, if it doesn't happen, I've got me and I've got to figure it out, right? So that's kind of what I mean like that. If it doesn't work out, be ready to make a new move.
Yeah,
right?
be ready to be strategic. I would say would be the biggest thing, and that's the only thing. When we hire somebody here, I don't do part time. You don't get the opportunity. It doesn't happen because when you have a part time, you're serving two masters, and what happens when you serve two masters is you give half-assed to both, and then you end up screwing up shit worse than you were before.
Right.
And so that's where like I said, I'm just challenging you a little bit on that mentality. Is because if we don't have that thing in the back of our head that goes, well, if the second something goes wrong here, I'm just going to get back on the boat and sail back to Spain. That's kind of what we do when we create a plan B. And it creates a sense of urgency, and then you just kind of figure shit out. And then if you don't like that plan, well, then go find a new one and build another boat. That's kind of the premise behind it. But yeah, that is my huge, my biggest frustration with our modern day school system is we look at these kids when they're 18 and we're like, what do you want to do for the rest of your life?
Here it is. Figure it out now.
I don't know. I didn't know what the hell I wanted to eat.
30 and I graduated college, and you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it took me a while.
And there's a hell of a lot more opportunity at that point. Like usually you'll find an employer that you like, and they'll pay for you to go to school, and like there's so much other opportunity outside of that. And hopefully our school system figures it out. Like I was just thinking about this the other day. I was the kid that was always like damn near perfect attendance and all that shit, and like. It's kind of like looking back at it now, like it's not really like a good thing if you really think about it. Seriously, it's not like what did you? Oh, cool! I was at school every day.
Right.
Like, okay.
Right.
Like with my wife, she literally maxed out the number of days she could leave because she was on horse shows and all that good stuff. Like, that's a real reason. Well, there's a couple other reasons too why we're thinking about homeschooling, but like, it's a real option. Yeah. You see a lot more people turning to it.
I think homeschooling now, the
resources.
Yeah, the resources are there, and what's the word I'm looking for? The vibe around homeschooling.
Yeah, it used to be
different.
You'd have a homeschool kid show up for football practice, like, the kid's a little weird.
Yeah. And the resources are there, and I think that I thought about this just the other day, and I thought, if I wasn't working full time, I would homeschool Branson, because I think that he's a people person, so he does like it, but I think that he would strive differently, educational, because he does have that learning barrier when it comes to the school system.
But a lot of times the people with I don't even want to call dyslexia like a disability, even though it is, like, it hinders what they're able to do. But like a lot of times they're able to do something much. He's probably a genius in math or something.
Well, he's just.
Or he's probably really mechanically inclined with, especially with.
He's like, I think you'll see when hopefully he's not nervous, but like when you sit down and have a conversation with him, like he can have a conversation with you, and if you read it to him, he's got it. But if he's got to read it himself. It's totally different. He's smart. He's super duper smart. And it's just hard because the way that they teach him isn't the way that he knows how to learn, or the way that he's learning how to learn. And that's hard for him. And it makes school miserable at times for him. And he has a hard time wanting to go to school.
Yeah, that's probably my biggest thing that because Tori was actually the first one to bring it up. And I was like, I don't know if I 100% agree with it just because of the social aspect. I think that's something that's very valuable that you can gather from school. On top of that, like, I learned more shit on the back of the bus than I did anywhere else.
Absolutely. That's why we take him to school.
See, I think it's a positive. I'm like, send him to the back of the bus. I remember I was a good kid, and I had to there was a bad kid that had to sit with me in the front of the bus the one time when I was in elementary school, and like, I was like, this is so cool, and he was like, this is dumb, and I'm like, yeah, whatever, man. But it's. I think there are some values inside of school, and like I've even had conversations with people about like college and how you're able to go away and get your freedom. But I think there's so many other opportunities to go and do that without putting yourself in a freaking $100,000 worth of debt.
Absolutely.
And maybe that's just like the because our grandparents, my great grandparents, your grandparents, financially like. Nothing, and my grandparents and your parents, it's kind of the same boat. Like they moved the needle ahead a little bit, so that's probably why we have that mindset. Is like, oh, I'm good. I don't want to go get in a bunch of debt for no reason. Right. Like I'm doing well. I'm okay. And you are too. But like you're also like, it's not worth it. No, it's not worth it.
I mean, I get the people who there are people who know what they're going to do at 18, and more power to them. I think about that all the time. I have some girls that I work with, and they knew right away what they were going to do, and they
were able to find their passion early, which
and they did it, and that's awesome. And I think that's amazing. And there's also those kids that go to school and they think school's awesome, and they're that AB student and they study hard. And I was never that person, and my kids aren't that person. But I also think that accommodating both sides, right? So, and being open to that, and I think sometimes the school misses that, and that's hard. I had a teacher, Branson had wadded up some paper, and because he didn't want to do it, because he had to read it, and he was frustrated. He wadded it up, and the teacher, I don't think there's been a parent-teacher conference that I haven't cried at, by the way, but the teacher kind of slammed it on the table and was kind of pissed that he did this, and I was like, he's frustrated. This is frustration. This isn't him being a bad kid, because everybody knows he's not a bad kid. This is frustration, and that's what this looks like. And now you're mad at him instead of trying to figure out what the problem is. And that's what I said. I said, where do we go from here? where are we going from here? Because he's not learning.
Is he on a WEP or anything?
He's on an IEP.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's on an IEP, and this is the first year that I felt like the IEP has actually kind of benefited him. It's hard because there's a ton of kids on the IEP, and they've got that. I know in his group there's one teacher, and there's probably the one teacher now travels with the kids, and before there was one teacher in different classes, and she pulls them out, and they go back if they need to, and she helps them with things. So this is the first year, and she's very she communicates well back and forth. But I just thought, how frustrating is that?
Well, and the other thing too, so like I have a teaching degree, obviously, and actually I think I had Brennan in class.
Yeah, I think you did.
So that was fun. I had a few cousins in class, but the frustrating part for me that I saw is I feel like sometimes with those programs, and this isn't the case, it sounds like for Branson, but sometimes with those programs, parents or teachers take the easy way out, and they're just like, oh, we'll just throw this thing at it and hope that it fixes a problem, instead of realizing that maybe the kid's a little bit lazier.
Right.
So then you get an overwhelming amount of kids in those programs instead of just pushing them to do what they're supposed to do.
Right.
And that's that was my frustration on that side. On the other side of it, on the teacher side of it, I think that there are so many teachers that I think that all teachers, for the most part, there's always a bad egg. There's a bad egg in everything.
Absolutely.
But I think all of them got into it for the right reasons, but our society and the system has broken them.
And I also think sometimes the system being certain parents and certain households.
Parents are assholes.
Yeah. They're not holding their kid accountable. And then
they're mad at the teacher for holding their kid accountable, and they're failing to realize they're not setting their kids up for success.
Correct.
There's so many parents nowadays that want to be a friend more than they want to be a parent.
Absolutely.
And I think it's something that's always happened. Like I think like our my parents and your parents' generation are like, oh, it wasn't like that when it may not have been like that for you.
Right.
But I'm sure for somebody it was like that.
Right.
And it's aggravating.
It is.
Because especially for me on the teacher side of it, like, yeah, you could tell this kid's not getting disciplined at home. They're not checking on their homework, which I was teaching sophomores. Like, they should have been able to, like...
check their own homework,
Yeah, absolutely. But also, like, how much did they just lax off before then to not set their kid up for success?
Absolutely.
And how many of those kids are struggling now in the workforce and all these other things that we fail to realize. I want to ask a question. What has been, like, your biggest challenge just in life in general? Like, if you could think of a big challenge for you to overcome, what was that?
So I thought about this before we came in, and I for lack of better words, I live in survival mode. And everything we kind of talked about today, and my goal it's been a goal for a while, is to slow down and enjoy more life. And it's hard when you've lived in survival mode most of your life, regardless of, your childhood and then adolescence and then, failed relationships. And, I feel like I've missed out on just enjoying moments because I'm just trying to survive. So that's where I want to be in life. I want to not worry because I'm surviving, right? So I'm going to survive, and that's where I'm going to be, and there's no other option for that. So being able to enjoy it instead of just being frazzled and saying, let's just get it over with.
Where do you think that comes from?
I think it comes from a lot of childhood things, trauma that happened, and bad choices that I've made in life as well. So not just my childhood, but when given an opportunity, making a bad choice and putting myself in a situation where I then had to survive, right? So I made bad choices, and then it became a habit, and it came a habit, and then something would happen, like my dad got sick, and then I just had to survive because I was taking care of him and figuring out, when is this going to happen? I got to take him to this doctor's appointment, and then I got to do this, and then I missed this whole 3 years of life with my kids because I was trying to make sure that he was okay. But like I said, I think it's drama that happened as a childhood, and then choices that I've made throughout life. I'm not perfect. I've made some very not perfect choices, and so survival was what I learned to do. And I'm 42 years old. I don't, what I'm saying? I have a good life. I have good kids. I have a good house. I have a good husband. Well, what am I trying to survive? What I'm saying? I am surviving, and I'm striving. Or is that the right word?
Yeah, you're thriving.
Yeah, thriving. That's it. So just reminding myself, slow down.
What has been the single most trying moment for you as a parent, as a professional, What like if you could highlight like one moment where you just kind of like lost it, what would that be for you?
As we know, Brennan got in a car accident about a year ago in December, and getting that phone call as a mom, I remember her voice. I remember the sound. She didn't even have to say anything. She said, "Oh, thank God, man, it's you." And I said, "What's wrong with Brennan?" And that's been the hardest thing. And I think that's kind of where maybe I've started pumping the brakes a little bit more, because life is so fragile. And at that point in time, not knowing details of the crash, of his situation, of the things, and her telling me, because it's his story to tell, so was staying away from details of her telling me, the situation that he was in, and waking up, and I'm like, Gary, we gotta go. I beat him to the hospital. That's where I was at with that, and luckily I worked there, and I called in. I'm like, he's coming in, and take care of him, please, because I didn't know the situation. I didn't know what was going to happen in working in healthcare. You know too much, especially in those situations, and I think that's been I've been through a lot in life, and we could probably talk for hours. I could tell you some stories that probably make your skin crawl, but that point right there, I said, and it's still a trigger for me, that I didn't know if, because I see things at work, I didn't know if that's what I was going to see. And I said, you've got to slow down a little bit, because tomorrow's not guaranteed.
Absolutely. No, I think that we all have a moment like that makes us like take a step back, and all of a sudden, or we all should, I should say. And life is fragile. Like, we're not guaranteed tomorrow. And I think that anyone's biggest fear as a parent is having to bury a child, right? And that's like from the second you bring that baby home from the hospital, up until really, because I do think that's one of the biggest tragedies that happens in the world, is a parent outliving a child. Like, that ultimate pain that has to come from that. My grandparents, my dad's parents, lost my aunt. They were both well into she was 60, I think, so they were both into their 70s at the time. But just like watching that and seeing the pain, and like, obviously at that point my aunt Ellen had lived a great life. She lived a great life to that point, and unfortunately cancer got the better part of her, and that's just the way the world works. And it sets you back, and you're like, tomorrow's not guaranteed.
Yep. And in my field, I see death a lot, and you don't think about it. My dad's died, my grandma's died, but that hit the hardest out of everything, because like you said, it's not normal to be in that situation and thinking about those kinds of things, and you just don't know.
You don't. And it's I can only imagine like the feeling surrounding that, and like you said, getting that phone call, because it was early, right? It was 1 or 2 in the morning.
It was like 12:06. Yep.
I remember the exact time, the whole bit, right? But so like, I'm sure you were in bed at that point. You're old. So.
I was in bed. My phone was vibrating, and my husband Gary had just come to bed, and I thought he had hit it. Well, my watch was vibrating, and I thought he had hit it when he came to bed, and I was like, that's really weird. And then I get like a weird ring on my phone, because my phone's always on vibrate with work, and I get a weird ring, and I look at it, and it's a Facebook call from some girl named Carmen that I don't even know who she is, and it was Brennan's girlfriend, and she had called me. Now I have to give her props to this, because I'd never met her before.
Okay.
And
hey, how you doing? Nice to meet you.
Like in the hospital, in the ER. But earlier in that day, her and Brennan had went to Dick's Sporting Goods, and you have like the Dick's Sporting card, and you have to type in your phone number. She remembered my phone number from Brennan typing it in. She's at the side of an accident where her boyfriend, is trapped in this car. she remembered my phone number. Now, she couldn't get a hold of me, but she dialed it 2 or 3 times, and I didn't answer it. She had to call me on Facebook because it was on vibrate. But I'm like, in that moment of sheer panic and whatever, she
got a hell of a fight or flight response.
She remembered the whole phone number.
That's
Never
awesome.
called to me before, but I thought that was awesome.
Which is good for a kid that young, because hell, you don't have to remember phone numbers ever.
No. She you could tell her like 50 numbers and she could recite them all back to you. But that was weird too. Like going to the hospital and I'm like, hey,
But it's it's a good reminder though that like nothing is like. I all the time am reminded that like nothing is left up to chance. Like all of it was predicted before. Oh yeah. Before we existed, like it has all been planned out, has all been laid out, good, bad.
Right.
It doesn't matter, and we go through what we go through because it's ultimately someone else's survival guide.
Yeah.
There's another mom that's getting that phone call, unfortunately, at some point in time, and she's got to rationalize all those decision makings and figure out how she's going to navigate through that. And there's another girlfriend that's ultimately having to call somebody's mom and talk about a bad situation that they're just now finding out about. Right. And it's, but it was all designed this way, and it's crazy.
It is.
The whole thing is nuts.
Right.
And that's where I struggle with folks who like don't believe in somewhat of a higher power, because even that watch on your wrist had a maker.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree with you.
And that's what's like so, I don't even want to say frustrating, but like sad, in my opinion, for folks that don't have that belief. Because it's like, how can you just think that this is all a chance? Right. Tori and I met in Nashville. We lived 45 minutes apart our entire life.
Yeah.
For most of it. And now, we're thriving and freaking it's crazy. And like the girl, they just happened to go to Dick's Sporting Goods that day. Like, that's insane.
Yeah. Yeah. And even the outcome of Brennan's accident is insane that he's still with us. So, I mean, the details of which is insane and he doesn't like to talk about it, but it's insane that he didn't have a seatbelt on. It's insane that he didn't have anything from here up that was wrong with him. And I truly believe because there's a reason.
God had a plan.
Yep.
No, God had a plan.
He's not done with that plan yet with him. So.
No, absolutely not. And that's what's hard, right? When we go through things and that we don't feel like are fair. Right. That we don't feel like that people deserve. There's a bigger picture.
He told me we were on our way home from a doctor's office, and the doctor that we went and saw just could not believe. Like she was, I can't believe you're still here. Do you know how lucky you are that you're still here? And like went on and on and on and on and on. And on the way home, I said, Brennan, do you realize how lucky you are? He goes, yeah, Mom. Yeah, I get it. I was supposed to die. And I said, whoa, that's not.
That's not.
No. You were supposed to live. Like, you're here for a reason. Whatever that is, you're here for that. And I said, maybe that you're going to be president. I doubt it. But, you know what I'm saying? You're here for a reason. And it wasn't that you were meant. You're here because of something.
Yeah, it was fate.
Yes.
Or whatever you want to call it, divine intervention.
Right. And it upset me that he's like, yeah, I get it. I was supposed to die. And I said, no absolutely not.
By what the world saw.
Right.
That's what was supposed to happen. Right. But by God's hand, that wasn't the case. And it's probably a big perspective change for both of you.
Yeah.
And it's not fun, but it can be very, very beneficial to somebody else.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. I can't, like I said, I remember, I think I woke up the next day and I think Caden actually had texted me and let me know.
Yeah, he was one of the first visitors at the hospital.
Yeah. He was there for him. And, praying for the kid and just hoping the best outcome came. That happened in January 23.
December of December 27th. So
of 23.
Of 23. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Because I remember at my wedding, he'd had a few drinks and he's like, "I just love you so much." That's all I can think about. It's like, you're such a good guy. Just like, he's a lovey-dovey drunk, but great kid, and just my heart went out, and
not that it's a blessing in disguise, but it, like I said, to me, it was my moment where I said,
there's more to life.
yeah.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, like, God could strip this all away from me tomorrow and put me in a cardboard box with people I care about and I'll be fine.
Right.
And too often, like, we get caught up in the material and, like, chasing the Joneses and all this other shit. And that's all it is. It's all shit.
Right.
I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like, a hearse never gets followed by a U-Haul. And, you know, one of the most powerful things I've ever seen was at both my grandparents' funerals. My dad's side particularly. All the grandkids got up and spoke. And like, what a testament to a life well lived.
Yeah.
And for two people that really were not wealthy by any stretch of the imagination. Right. You know, maybe broke into six figures on a net worth scale at the time of their passing.
But not money wealthy, but
they were the richest people I ever knew.
Absolutely.
And that was for me. Like, yeah, what am I like? Don't get me wrong. Like, I want my kids to have a good life. I want to be able to provide for them. But also at the same time, like, if I'm not able to sit down and just enjoy, I'll never have the 8-month-old that's in my living room when I get home tonight again.
No.
Ever. Even if she has a sibling, like, God willing, I'll still never get that moment back.
No.
And it's never too late to start.
No.
Right? The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is today.
Right now, yeah.
And it sounds like, you know, you may not have got it right 20 years ago, but it's good that you were able to sit down and say, you know what, I'm going to be where my feet are a little bit more intentionally, a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And because I hate giving gifts. I hate receiving gifts. It's not that I'm not appreciative, but like it's all junk to me. Like, give me a moment.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just talking with your mom about the holidays, and they're different, right? And I said, I want to enjoy those moments with my kids. I don't want them to show up for an hour, then turn around and have to leave and go to 4 other places. If it's not if it's not Christmas, let's do it, you know, the week after Christmas or whatever day that we can just sit down and enjoy one another. Whatever that, because I want you to enjoy your own family, right? So whatever that looks like for you, I want you to enjoy your own family and your moments with them, because that's important. But I want to be able to, you come over and then I want to enjoy the whole picture of it. So, yeah.
That's been a struggle for my mother, as I'm sure she was sharing. But like, when we had Lainey, I told both sides, I said, my kids are waking up on Christmas at our house. They're going to enjoy Christmas.
Important, yeah.
And they're going to enjoy that magic that is Christmas, because you only get it for a short period.
Yep.
I'm sure...
we're running out of that magic.
Yeah, the magic is leaving. And you know, another thing that I think that too often parents get wrong in that scenario is like, I never really saw it because my parents were like, we got everything from Santa. And now I look back and I'm like, I really wish that we would have just got the basics from Santa.
Yeah.
Give me the socks. Give me the underwear.
Well, I also feel like I worked hard for that. Santa's not getting
the credit. Santa's
not getting the credit for that Xbox you got.
Yes.
Yeah.
But like our parents, like they would, like everything was from Santa. And like now that I look at it in perspective, I'm like, well, what about that kid that didn't get?
Right.
And then he's going home and wondering, why doesn't Santa love me as much as, or why I was good? Why didn't, you know, and that's something we've also had a conversation about. And like you said, the credit. Like, I should get some, like, not to be conceited, but like, why the hell is this dude that nobody knows getting all the credit?
Santa, he's not even going to be existing in a couple years. So.
He's gonna feather away here in a little bit. And that's, you know, you talk about the holidays and like, I'm very it's not that I don't appreciate gifts, but like I have such a hard time buying people things even because I'm like, I don't really, like, it's not that I don't care about you, but I would just much rather spend an afternoon with you and have dinner and do that than, and I don't know why I'm like that. I don't. I know there are, Dr. Gary Chapman talks about it. Have you ever read the book, The Five Love Languages?
I briefly touched,
Okay, so you've probably taken the assessment. You know what yours is like mine's quality time, number 1, physical touch, number 2, or whatever. And like there are 5 of them, and I know that 20% of the population probably has number 1 at gifts and gift giving or gift receiving. But like, I'm not that, and I know people that are, and it's good for them. But like, I can't. I don't know. It's a perspective change for me. Like especially because like you said, time is so finite. So like, give me an experience. Like, give me your time. Let's have a quality conversation.
Right. Yeah, I wanted to start doing that this year for Christmas. I asked Brendan and his girlfriend. His schedule's so crazy, so I said I'd much rather give you an experience that you guys could do together. I didn't, because his schedule, he wasn't sure if he's going to work the weekend, and I didn't want to buy $300 tickets for something he couldn't go to. But that's, I think, moving forward, something that I want to do. I want to give you an experience that you'll have a memory for, because, you know, in 2 years those shoes may not fit, or, you know, the clothes may not fit, and I want to give you a memory that you can have. And even if it wasn't with me, I'm okay with that. I want him to experience life. And I cherish, oh gosh, we went out to dinner last night, and all of us were there. And then, of course, the girlfriends were there, which is fine. It's totally fine. But
just don't let them be in family pictures. We learned that the hard way at our house.
And I do.
You can, but just get a separate one.
I do like both their girlfriends. They're good girls. But gosh, I was just like, I'm so happy right here in this moment, right here, and we were just shooting the shit, right? Nothing major, nothing joking around.
And nobody's got any big announcements to make. No big life changes are happening. You're just in the moment.
Yeah, and that's what I want from now on. Like, I just want that.
Do you think that before, because it sounds like, just in talking, that the crash was a pivotal moment for you, and maybe you still do this, and this is something that, like, I've been very adamant about. I'm working on a book, actually.
All right, cool.
It's called Identity Crisis, and it's we all go through one. We do, and you kind of already have touched on it a little bit, like the boys being involved in sports, and then Brendan getting out, and he's trying to fill that void that was sports, because he put his entire identity in Brendan the athlete, not Brendan the man or Brendan the person. Do you find yourself sometimes in identifying as a mom more than you do Amanda?
You know, I watched your mom's episode, and I feel like sometimes I do, but my husband and I, we do things, the two of us.
So important.
So we go out to dinner once a week, the two of us, or once every couple weeks. We do take vacations, just the two of us. And there are moments that I do not put myself first, absolutely, and I think that's important in some aspects. But there are moments that I do put myself first as well, because that's important to me. Because if I don't, you're gonna get a not so good version of me.
A lesser version.
Yes, and maybe I should do that more often, or maybe change what those moments look like. But I don't feel like my identity has always revolved around my kids. And
it's something we have to be so careful of.
And sometimes I feel guilty about that as well, right? So it's a catch-22. If you do revolve around your kids, then your identity is wrapped around it. But if you don't, then does society look at you differently because you're not, like your mom said, I was known as Dylan and Brandon's mom. I'm not even sure my kids' friends know my name. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, It's not that I don't go to all their stuff. It's not like I'm not their number one rooter. It's just that they're not hanging out at my house because I like my privacy, right? And there are times they come over.
Oh, our house was the freaking house.
Yes, and I get that, but I like my personal space, and their kids, they do come over. I don't keep them from coming over,
yeah, that's a good point, because like I was just talking to Tori about this the other day. Like, I yearn for that desire to, like, I want to be more so than anything, I want to be the safe space for kids. Mm-hmm. Like, you have a shitty home life, come to our house. Right. Like, you'll be okay. There's always food. Right. There's stuff to do. Like, it's a safe space. Right. But also at the same time, like, you can't just totally put yourself in that position, because if you do, you end up in a circumstance when you're out of kids that now you don't have kids, and then you end up being the crazy cat lady. I mean, seriously, like, not that everybody gets to that, but like, you see people trying to fill that void with something. Right. And it's hard. I think it's extra hard for people that maybe didn't have the best home life growing up, and then they want to provide more. And they're like, I got to give more to my kids, and I want my kids to have a better life. And it's such a good sentiment to have. But also at the same time, like, I will tell my kids the whole time that they're growing up that this is mommy daddy money. Like, I'm going to take it all with me, one way or another. Yeah. Not that I don't want to leave you an inheritance. You'll get something. But like, at the end of the day, I tell my parents that all the time. I'm like, spend it.
Absolutely.
You earned it, spend it. Like, I understand the desire to want to put us ahead, but like, also at the same time, like, don't. Right. It's okay. Like, we're good. Especially if you raise your kids right. I think that it's something that people oftentimes like forget, But I'm happy to hear that like you and Gary have your own time together, and it's different for everybody.
Yep.
But I think it's so vital to not forget what made that child, which is the love between two people, but then also like the love for yourself.
Right. Yeah. And it's a balancing act. And like I said, when you said when you went home from the hospital, here's this kid, and now what do I do with it? Also, here's myself, and what do I do with it? And here's my wife, and how do you take care of this whole ecosystem?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's no such thing as work-life balance. People that say that shit's a liar. Like, it doesn't exist. It's more so like, especially, I'm in a great position like where I can keep my kids involved in the business and my wife and stuff like that. I know, like, obviously with your job, like, you can't take your kids to work. Right. It's kind of frowned upon. But like, I think that it's so important for people. Like, we're going through it right now. I'll be transparent. You know, our baby still sleeps in our bed. My wife's still breastfeeding. Like, it's so much easier for her to just take care of the baby at night and all that good stuff. But I've like continued to harp on her, and she's probably getting annoyed with me at this point where I'm like, she's got to go to her own bed at some point. Like, you've got to. It's not that you need to create any separation, but like she needs to start to develop some independence, even if she's only 8 months old. Like, she still needs to find that independence. It's like we're even getting to the point now where like Tori will leave and she'll cry, and I'm like, okay, we're gonna break that. I don't know how, but we're going to. You know. And I'm so thankful that, like, God bless my wife with the ability to, because I know a lot of moms that don't have that opportunity to do the breastfeeding thing and stuff like that. But, like, there is so much value in just, like, remembering the two of you. And, like, that's one of our big challenges for this year is, like, we were really good about it for a long time. Obviously, before kids. Like, just taking a weekend away for ourselves once a quarter and doing the date nights. And, like, well, at this point, I have spent one night away from the baby, and she has spent 0. And once again, we hinge it on that, the breastfeeding thing. But we're lucky enough she does both. She'll bottle feed, as well. So we've got to eventually get to that point where you kind of let that go, but let people run their race.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what works for you may not work for them, and what works
goes
for
back
you,
to that baby at the hospital.
Exactly. Yeah. So you know, I think parenthood, as long as you've got, you know,
just raise good people.
Yeah, absolutely. And hang on for the ride. And sometimes you're hanging on, sometimes you're enjoying, sometimes you're crying. I wouldn't change anything. I would change some moments, but not anything. You know what I'm saying?
It comes back to your presence, it sounds like, more than anything in your moments.
Yeah. Just those. Like, I mean, obviously you have bad moments as a parent where you're like, what the hell was I doing? Like, I should not have approached that situation like that. And I led with anger instead of, you know, clear thought. But I think, you know, parenting is, it's a great blessing.
It is.
And you've got to find the good balance between the whole ecosystem, for sure.
Well, and like I said, Tori and I are lucky enough that we kind of decided to, we didn't meet each other till later anyways, but we kind of waited to have kids, and it gives you more perspective. Like, now I'm able to say, like, my daughter calls me up at 16 because she's been drinking. It's a simple get in the car, and I don't say anything, and you get home safely, and that's what matters, and we can have a discussion about it when Dad's a little less heated, right? But I pick up the phone, and not that my parents would have, I don't think my parents would have ever been that way. Tori says it all the time, like, her house was strict and mine wasn't. Like, it just wasn't. I didn't have a curfew. I didn't, kind of maybe wish I did sometimes. You know? I think kids need that structure more than we give them credit for. Even when they're good kids, you know, they can make dumb choices when they have too much freedom. But yeah, it's hard. Parenting in general, life in general, like, it's hard to want to give people slack. You know?
Yeah.
It's very hard to want to give people, and sometimes those people are ourselves. You know, there was something else. I did want to touch on one more thing as we get towards the end of the episode here. And you had talked about, or I know you're very passionate about the stuff with the respiratory therapist stuff. You know, you harp on Brandon all the time for vaping.
Yeah. He actually said he's quit, so that's what we're going with.
Oh, Brandon does?
Yeah.
I'm talking about Brandon.
Oh, Brandon. Oh, yeah.
He's vape god.
Yes.
You know, and the stuff, just because you've seen it in your field, I'm curious to know, just because you have seen it, have you seen any, because obviously vaping is like kind of somewhat new in the ecosystem, and honestly, I think it's done a good job of curbing smoking.
I agree with that.
On top of the taxes they put on smoking, but have you seen any, like, in your patients, have you seen any side effects that have kind of played a role?
I don't know that there's enough time elapsed to see it, right? So
because we heard about the popcorn lung.
Yeah.
When they first come out,
Yeah.
this random popcorn lung
Yeah.
thing that you've never heard of anybody
Right.
getting, and everybody's like, oh, popcorn lung.
I think the effects that we'll see, if we do see any, will be, 10 years out, because just like smoking, you don't get any effects from smoking for the first, so long. And then your lungs do try to kind of regenerate and fix themselves a little bit over time. But, so the vaping, I don't know that I don't know that I've noticed anything with younger kids coming in, because it is such a big, and I really should not be saying this because it is a really big
No, it's an epidemic
Yeah.
with the way that kids are. I remember Caden bought someone, he was like 17, and
Yeah.
he literally made him throw them away.
Yeah, I could go on stories about Brennan and his vaping, but we won't. But I know, and to me it's an addiction, right? So it causes the addiction. I think that's the big thing. But I haven't seen any kids come in and we're like, oh God, their lungs are shot because they've been vaping for the last 10 years. Now in the future, will they have the same effects that smoking does, damaging the lungs with emphysema and bronchitis and stuff like that? Possibly, but I think it's just still too early to kind of tell where we're at in that.
Yeah, I think the hard part is like, so for me, we were talking about a little bit, I do the nicotine stuff, and something I picked up kind of on accident. I was doing 75 hard and I needed something to curb the cravings that I was having, and I was like, I'll just pop some nicotine, and here we are. And a year later, I've been full on the train. But it wasn't anything like, I wasn't a smoker. I smoke a couple cigars every now and then, and I just kind of picked it up as a habit because I knew nicotine curbs appetite, and it was an easy fix for that. And now it's turned into where like I'm a raging asshole if I don't have nicotine, and it's horrible. Like it is like, and Tori can tell me about it all the time because she relates it back to like in DARE class. Do they still have DARE?
I don't know that they have DARE. No, none of my kids had DARE.
They should.
They should.
I feel like
they
they did
have something different than DARE. I don't know.
Yeah, they should have something. But DARE was cool. I graduated and all that good stuff. But she brings up like they would be like, and this is horrible when you think about it for kids. Like, raise your hand if your parents smoke.
Yeah.
Like, why the hell are you having kids raise their hand?
My parents were like, don't you raise your hand about anything. You didn't see any of those shows.
Yeah.
Those shows you didn't see.
Yeah, those didn't exist. Those weren't there. When Grandpa Piker was noted. He didn't see that. Like, okay, well, sure. Yeah. Where'd that skunk go?
Yeah.
He's dead now. He can't give me shit for anything. But, it's... But she would say that like her dad chewed, so like she would have to raise her hand that her dad used tobacco. And now he does nicotine. Once again, don't know if it's any better or worse.
Right.
You curb the desire for the nicotine. You don't have the tobacco side effects, which the studies that we've seen show that it actually it shows some sign of benefit. And I don't really know, and maybe you can shine some light on this because you're obviously in the field. I don't really know of a ton of negatives aside from obviously just the addiction in and of itself, and maybe some possible tooth decay and things like that. But you read the package on it and it says this product is addictive. It doesn't say anything about the nasty stuff that what was it, some of those countries like Mexico and stuff, like they put like mouth cancer on cigarettes and stuff. How we tax cigarettes. I was looking at it the other day and I was like, who the hell's paying $10 for a pack of cigarettes?
I used to be a smoker and I thought, there's no way. There's no way. I used to smoke a pack a day and I was like, there's no way I could even afford to do
how
that.
many conversations I've had with folks? I'm like, you realize if you stop smoking, how much you could afford.
Crazy.
Like, if you really break it down. But yeah, I
think it comes down to everything in moderation, right?
It does.
So if that nicotine, that patch doesn't have any additives that could cause side effects, right? So if it's just straight nicotine, is there complications? There could. Everybody's different, but it comes down to everything in moderation, right? Just like eating and everything like that. Everything can have a negative effect on your body if you're overdoing it.
You can OD on anything. Like, people want to say all the time that you can't OD on marijuana, but like, you can because you go to the next thing. You chase the next high.
Right.
That's what I call ODing on marijuana. Yeah. And that's where I struggle with folks who are like, well, it's not a gateway drug. Well, it technically is.
Right.
If you look at it on the way that it should be, because your body's getting something. Quite frankly, I think alcohol is the number one gateway drug because people are chasing something else. As somebody that I didn't grow up around alcoholics, but they weren't alcoholics at the time that I knew them. I guess the way that AA defines them, they were alcoholics still.
Right, yeah.
All four of my grandparents at different points in their life had struggled with alcohol to some degree. And, my Uncle Danny and the whole situation that happened there. And for the folks at home, he essentially had drank himself to the point where he became don't want to say an invalid because that's what he wasn't, but he lost motor function.
Yep.
And I saw those negative effects, and I remember going over to his trailer to mow his grass. No AC in that damn thing. It was 95 degrees in his freaking trailer, and he had one bush light, or one bush heavy. And he drank 30 rack a day. And loved him to death. Great guy. But you see folks like that, and you're like, that's not good. Right. That's not okay.
Right.
Or some people, go back to that analogy I gave, some people are like, yeah, that's what I want to do. That's what I saw so-and-so doing, and it becomes a negative. But on the aspect of like everything in moderation, like I tell people all the time, I'm going to die of something. Especially in today's world. They do not slap on a freaking death certificate, died of natural causes. That doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
There's something that somebody died from. Right. So that's why I struggle with the fact that, like, yes, I agree. Everything should be done in moderation. I have a problem with eating. That's why I'm fat. All that good stuff. And I struggle with nicotine. But everybody has a vice. And too often, like, we get caught up in other people's vices of, like, well, he's a heroin addict. I'm not as bad as him. And it's like, okay. I get that. Like, you're not a crackhead. Congratulations. But, like, do you struggle with alcohol? Do you struggle with something else? And stop pointing the finger and start realizing there's three pointing back at you.
Absolutely.
That, you're not in a glass house. Like, all that good stuff. But I agree. I agree with that. Like, does the vaping bother me? It does when you're around my kid. Like, I don't want you to vape around my kid. I'll probably punch you in the throat if you do.
Right.
I'm very protective of what I want for her.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, like, if you want to destroy your body with something,
that's your body. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, because we can't be judgmental, right? There's so much shit and everything that we do. So we can't say that your vaping's better than me eating or drinking sugar-free pop or something to that effect. There's nothing good in that.
There ain't a damn good in sugar-free pop. No. We just sell ourselves that, it's good for you.
But I'm not vaping, right? So,
exactly.
Yeah. And that, I think that goes back to our conversation earlier is meeting people where they're at and knowing that, hey, listen, again, I don't want it for me. You want to do it.
Just don't involve me in it.
Yeah.
Just don't involve me in it. That's my stance and has been for a long time. And, it is on marijuana. Like, if you want to smoke weed. Don't ask me to smoke weed with you.
Absolutely.
That's kind of like how I feel about gay people. Like, don't ask me to be gay. You can be gay all you want. It's cool. It's not for me. But go ahead.
Right. If it makes you happy.
Exactly.
I mean, there's standards on that.
Yes, it's not our place. At the end of the day, we all have a final judgment.
Yeah.
And it's not here.
Yeah.
And too often, like, we get wrapped up in that crap, and hell, you go to the state of California and everything causes it causes cancer.
I know. I bought some wheelies or Heelys for Branson, and there's like this big warning on it. It causes
California
cancer.
prop.
I was like, oh my gosh, should I not buy these? And I'm like, listen, everything you have in your household is probably going to cause cancer. It's totally fine.
And like, there are things that we should not be consuming into our bodies and things we probably shouldn't be using, and I get that. But also at the same time, like, let them do what they want to do.
Right.
If you want to spend your money on something that hurts you in the long run, go for it.
Right.
As
long as you're not hurting someone else.
Exactly. That's where we have to draw the line in society, right? But at the end of the day, like, if you wanna drink alcohol and that's your vice and you can function as a human and be a productive member of society and not be a knucklehead and go do dumb things, sure, do it.
But also know that don't be naive to the consequences that comes along with those things. That's a huge thing for me. Like, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. But don't play the woe is me card when you made all the choices to get to that point.
Exactly. So. No, and that's the thing that, like, and everything has a consequence. Our conversation today has a consequence.
Absolutely.
Good or bad, right, wrong, or indifferent. A consequence isn't necessarily a negative thing.
No.
But we have to realize that every action that we take is a positive or a negative. There was a time in my life when I was on the brink of suicide and just in a really dark place. And I talk about it all the time. Like, Dr. John Maxwell talks about the elevator principle. I talk about him a lot, and he's one of the most influential people in my life, but he calls it the elevator principle. Either bringing people up or you're putting them down. And you have to realize that whatever you're doing is having an effect on somebody.
Right.
Good or bad. And it may not be somebody you even know. I talk about it all the time. Like, there were probably smiles at gas stations that saved me. And like, you don't think about it in the moment, right?
Right.
But it's just like, be kind and show positivity and just be a good person.
Right.
Because that's what changes people for the better. But yeah, if you're going to go drink, you have to realize, or that's your vice, right? Since that's the piece that we're on. And you decide to go be an idiot. Let's not even put it in the worst case scenario of where, you go hurt somebody or hurt yourself. Let's just say that you're affecting relationships around you by doing so.
Right.
I've watched people do it in my life, and it's not healthy. And I don't know if it's even a lack of care. That's the hard part.
Right.
That's what you struggle with as a human. Like, I don't necessarily know that they don't care.
Right.
Because I think they do. But like, talk about meeting people where they are. You a freaking idea.
It's hard. My dad was an alcoholic, and I remember begging and not getting it, and then wondering, like, how could you not care? How could and amongst the alcoholic, there was other things that he did, and that's why he died at a young age. But not wanting to strive to meet grandkids that you haven't had or participate with those grandkids, because that. I didn't get that, but I also didn't have the demons that he had, and I didn't understand the battles that he had, and they weren't mine to fight. So, and he was doing the best he could.
But did that perspective change more when you had kids?
It did. It did, and there's still times that I get frustrated.
I was gonna say, is there resentment build up still?
I get frustrated. And I still don't know why. I do know why, because I've been in dark places, and I've crawled out of some dark places myself, and been made choices that were selfish before, but I still know that in the end, like, my family comes first, and it was hard for me to not understand why his family didn't come first. To him, he probably felt like they were coming first. Like, he was doing the best he could do.
He was providing.
Yes. He was doing the best that he could do with the cards that he had been dealt. But again, he picked those cards. So don't sit around and say, woe is me, when...
That's the part that's probably the most frustrating in the human perspective, is like, especially at where, it sounds like you and I are on the same page as where we're at in life. Like, you get an I'm sorry once from me.
Right.
And if you determine that you still want to play that game, it's not my decision.
Right.
I'm good with it, but realize that, once again, back to the consequences thing, there's consequences, and that may be me not wanting to communicate with you, me not wanting to put my children in those situations, blah, 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 whatever it is. We have to make the best decisions for the people that we're in control of and the things that we're in control of. And I struggle with people who are in a bad spot, and me knowing fully that, like, this is hands down the greatest country in the world. I've been all over the world. We were talking about, you guys were asking about my trip to Africa and stuff earlier, and I've seen people in those situations out there, and we're not even close. I've been to third world countries, like, I've been to first world countries that supposedly have it just as, this is the land of opportunity, and especially in today's world where it's kind of like you heard about our parents talking about with, you'd be able to, or my grandparents, your parents, where you quit a job at Mansfield Tire and you go pick up a job at Westing or whatever, whatever that thing was. Like, we're kind of in that situation today where you can literally drop a job today and go get a job tomorrow, and it's like there's jobs on every corner.
Right.
You're going to sit here and bitch that you don't have enough or whatever.
Set yourself up to succeed, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Put yourself in a position.
And the opportunity is there.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, you see it played out with, you hear the term deadbeat dad a lot, right? Because it's just the easy one to throw around, but there's so many deadbeat moms as well.
Oh, yeah.
And they like to play those cards like, oh, look at me. And it's like, yeah, well, we had somebody, I won't name drop, but we had an experience here at work where a guy was like, I'm homeless, I'm on the street, I need a job, blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, dude, there is never a moment when I wouldn't go flip burgers if I had to, or whatever that.
Right.
Like, I don't understand that. Once again, back to not being able to level out with them, but also, like, I don't feel sympathy for you because you're not playing your cards correctly.
I think it's hard because I use the word demons a lot, right? So I don't know what demons you're trying to fight.
Absolutely.
And getting a job for you may be hard because you have demons that are speaking to you that I don't understand, right? So it goes back to making a choice. I don't understand it. I don't have to understand
Absolutely.
it. I can look at the situation and say, hey, listen, I know that I want X, Y, and Z. How do I get X, Y, and Z? And I think some people can't look at that situation. Do I understand it? Not necessarily, because I'm not one of them people. So that's hard also. And again, meeting people where they're at. The opportunity's there, but
how do I help change your perspective?
Yes.
Because that's at the end of the day what really matters.
Yeah.
Like it's to you can give a man a fish for a day. You teach a man a fish.
Yeah.
Like you have to get there with those people, and that's so freaking hard.
Yeah.
Because people just don't. They don't get it.
Yeah.
They don't get it, and how folks cannot get on that. It's
hard.
Like Brandon and I were talking the other day. Like the second you bring that baby home from the hospital, I'm gonna do everything in my power to make sure that they're at least provided for.
Yeah.
And that's where I struggle with other folks who are like, no, I'm not a parent. I'm not.
Good.
It's like,
or they do something awful,
Yes. And don't get me wrong. The people that selflessly give a child up for adoption, kudos to them.
Right.
Because I couldn't do it.
Right.
I couldn't do it. And that's very selfless, in my opinion, in most circumstances, because it wasn't a circumstance where the child was going to be in a better position. But for the folks that have every opportunity in the world or don't take that route and don't necessarily have the best scenario and know that they're bringing a kid and not willing to work out, my heart hurts for the kid.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's where my sympathy stops, I think. But back to the demon thing, like there's so much generational shit that we carry on from our parents, and then you have to unload that somehow. You could have chosen to say, well, my dad was an alcoholic, so I'm going to be one too.
Right.
And I remember he was fun. Like he was a good time.
He was fun.
He was a good time. But I'm proud of you for not wanting to take that baggage and pass it, because that's the hard part. Like once you realize that I can pass the shit on to my kids, you're like, not gonna probably do that.
Right.
But you have to make a choice.
Right.
So this was fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
This was fun.
We went some time. I'm like, he's literally going to get 30 minutes out of me. That's all I got for him. So
no, as long as you're open, we get a good conversation, and I'll wrap things up here. So if you didn't get something out of today, I don't know what to tell you. We covered a lot of bases, and as I selfishly ask, I should say, if you got something out of today and you know somebody else could get something out of it, share it with them. Let them know about it. I think there's a lot of valuable little nuggets in here, from raising kids to overcoming adversity to just putting your best foot forward and putting yourself first. That's probably the biggest synopsis of the conversation. So, I guess thank you for listening, and thank you for tuning in. And as you go about your life, continue to ask yourself, what's your why?